you are not going to have the same benefits on semen retention as another man who is spiritually inclined as well as integrated in terms of the masculine, right? He's still in tune with his masculine self. He's still in tune with his body, masculine interests, masculine hobbies. You hear the word, you hear that word, that divine masculine, thrown around a lot in this spiritual space, right? In the semen retention community, really the general spiritual community. But I don't know. I don't think that's what you're seeing. That's not what I'm seeing when I'm, looking at other spiritual individuals. If I'm being honest, I've kind of noticed that a lot of men in this space, they lack masculine integration. They're spiritual, sure, but I wouldn't really call them masculine, right? And when you're using the word divine masculine and you're throwing that word out, you kind of have to, you can't ignore the masculine part of it, right? The divine masculine, right? There's a masculine aspect to that as well. And something that I've learned on my multi-year semen retention journey is that you're gonna have to integrate. You've got to integrate. I went through the whole phase where, you wake up and you see reality for what it is, and NPCs and soulless individuals, and you want to get away and you want to detach and you want to be off grid, all that, right? I went through that phase, and I think I would have expedited my growth getting out of that phase sooner, right? I had to realize that I signed up for this, right? You signed up for this. We all signed up to come down here and experience, right, life in a human vessel, right? This is an experience. We signed up for it. So to think that we were meant to come down here and, okay, screw this guy, screw that situation. I'm gonna put myself in the corner here, and I'm gonna ride this lifetime out. To think that that was the way to come do things, completely wrong, right? That's not it. Come on, let's keep it a buck. Intuitively speaking, that makes sense, right? Like, we didn't come here, we didn't choose to incarnate down here to just avoid everything, right? So masculine integration, what does that look like? Well, as a man, you've got to be in tune with the planet. You got to be in tune with Mother Earth. So me personally speaking, as someone who's in a blue collar field, and I'm a tradesman, and I love using my hand, like I've got rags on right now. I'm about to do some work in my garage. About to do a little painting and whatnot. There's something divine about, physical labor. And I'm not saying that I don't use my brain for other things. I've got many, many different interests and hobbies, but this is the trades are something that I feel connects me to the planet in a healthy way, right? My brother and I would notice, back in the day, even now for myself, after a day of like long, hard, manual labor, my magnetism is always like through the roof when I go out. I'm still in a fasted state. I've just been doing work with my hands, connecting with, the material, again, in a healthy manner. My magnetism is through the roof when I go out. I mean, like, It's absurd. So I've been forced to pay attention to that, right? There's something there. And this doesn't happen with just any activity that I do. It's just specifically, manual labor. So it's very interesting for me to witness. And again, I'm an observer, so I'm just sitting back observing, and more answers will come regarding that. And something else that goes hand in hand with the physicality, we talk about weightlifting. Guys, you see these Hindu monks. I see these guys, I see their names brought up all the time. People always use, they name drop, Yogananda or Swami Vivekananda. They name drop these Hindu monks. And there's a lot that you can learn from them, right? Don't get me wrong. I've learned a lot from both of them, really. For example, wet dreams. I learned a lot about the wet dreams from, I think, one of the two monks. It may have been Vivekananda. And, waking up early. You wake up and you're not really feeling the best. You're kind of groggy, but your body's up. And your mind will tell you, hey, let me crash for another hour. You go back to bed. Next thing you know, you wake up and you have a wet dream. And one of the Swamis, I believe it was Vivekananda, he mentioned that you're supposed to stay up. Long story short. So sun goes up and you're up. Regardless of if you're tired, doesn't really matter. You go back to bed. And I've experimented with this. I would go back to bed back in the day and then wake up and like, damn, like, wet dream, right? It was a pointless leak. That energy needed an outlet right then and there. So the right thing to do was to get up and go do something. But I went back to bed and I got a wet dream. Funny enough, some of my best lifts in the gym have been in a tired state like that too. You know, it's kind of interesting to me. I'm talking about like 4 hours worth of sleep, 5 hours, not really feeling like I slept the best. I've had some of my strongest workouts like in that state. So it's very interesting. These Hindu monks, again, there's a lot to learn from them, but at the same time, when I think of the divine masculine, I don't really imagine those two, you know, or, you know, Hindu monks, you know what I mean? They don't really look like the most masculine people, right? If anything, they look very feminine. They kind of look like women. Very childlike, feminine features. I don't know that that's what we're going for here, right? And to a lot of people, you know, that's a big part of, you know, Indian culture, you know, Hindu culture. And I don't mean to come across as someone who's knocking down something that's, you know, very important to certain people, right? Two figures that are very important to certain people. But if I'm being honest, I think a lot of what you know, the Hindu culture understands and knows about these guys are, you know, it's propaganda, right? I believe Yogananda had a, you know, purely vegetable-based diet, and the other Vivekananda, I think, you know, he would eat meat and fish here and there, but his diet was still mainly, primarily, you know, vegetables, right? If you look at their lifespan and their physiques and how they were built and how they died, you know, it's kind of intuitive to understand that they didn't have everything figured out, right? Specifically regarding the physical. We're not supposed to be here neglecting our vessels. So semen retention, right? Now what? Fasting, right? Your diet, right? Physical training. All these things are important. And I think to truly call yourself someone who's a divine masculine, right? Or to really embody that, you've got to hit all those fronts, right? Intuitively, right? This makes sense, right? Sometimes you don't really need books and this and that to confirm something. Like, listen to your intuition. Assuming you're someone who's not relapsing left and right, your intuition is very powerful. It's going to be very accurate. Now, if you're relapsing, then, you know, give it some time before you trust that shit. Other than base intuitive hunches, you know, don't trust that right now. But if you've been doing the work and, you know, your energy is on point, trust your intuition. I've had people, you know, name drop those two in my comment section, telling me, oh, Ross, you're a carnivore, man. Those two, they didn't eat meat. I'm like, all right, cool, man. Like, oh, the animal and frequency. No. It's about intention, right? You can set your intention with anything, really, even a shower. You can set intentions with the food that you eat. And believe it or not, how your body takes that in, it can be a little different, right? We're very, very supernatural. We've got very supernatural abilities, whether you want to accept or understand that. It doesn't really matter. That's just the case. The movie Avatar shows this very well. You know, after hunting, they would always have a hunting ritual where they would, you know, show gratitude for the animal that they killed. And it's movies like Avatar, you know, Jupiter Awakening, you know, they've got so many truths regarding animals and, you know, bees and the hunting rituals, like I just mentioned. Like, there's so many truths that they flash, right? So yeah, eating meat, you know, guys, you need muscle meat. You need muscle tissue. That's just the truth. I've had a guy on my Discord, 16-year-old, who was abusing himself, right? I'm talking about, he told me, I mean, he was jerking off with a death grip, and doing that for enough time kind of, I guess, caused him to bleed around his genital area. So skin was pulling apart, something like that. And he was asking me, yo, Ross, what do I do to regenerate that? And I'm like, okay, bro, what's your diet? What do you eat? 5 eggs. I'm like, okay, so you're only eating 5-6 eggs a day. So what, that's 70 calories per egg. So you're eating 400 calories per day? He's like, yeah, I only eat once a day. So I'm like, okay, first I'm like, I know you're skinny. I know you're really underweight. How much do you weigh? Dude's 110 pounds, right? He's a 110 pound 16-year-old asking me how to fix this issue with his genitals, right? How to heal the skin around it. And he's getting 0 protein in, right? He's getting protein from eggs. So 6 grams of protein per egg. He's getting 40 grams of protein. So he's not even close to hitting that, you know, minimum 0.7 to 1, you know, grams of protein per pound of body weight ratio. That's common knowledge. So how can I help you, right? I ask him his blood type. What's your blood type? Now, I'm someone who, I eat for my blood type. I've learned, you know, they'll tell you, hey, it's a myth, this and that. Inherently, every single blood type needs meat, but to various degrees, right? You do need other foods. Other foods may suit you, may suit your blood type very well. That's one of the big reasons why I'm a carnivore, right? I've noticed that I just thrive with it. I've tried so many different things, except for veganism. I used to incorporate vegetables back in the day, but none of it has done wonders for my body. My skin, my mind, my strength training. It's been through the roof since I've been a carnivore. This 16-year-old, I eventually had to get him out of my Discord because he was, the frequency was getting low. Sometimes when you're trying to help someone and they don't want to incorporate your solutions or your recommendations, and they just keep on complaining after that, especially in a group full of other people. And, there's energy in text. And, the collective energy of the main chat was just going downhill because of one individual. So, he had to be removed. But long story short, the kid had no protein in his diet, right? He had no muscle tissue in his diet. You need meat. And funny enough, I asked him for his blood type and he told me he was O blood type. He was O positive. So I'm like, okay. He told me that his culture didn't really allow for him to eat meat, something like that, right? Whether it was his religion or something, he couldn't eat meat. So he had to eat eggs and tofu and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. But, to a certain extent, that's the whole thing with culture and programming. It's religion, so many humans are going to stay at a lower consciousness until they can realize that certain things are put in place to keep you in a low frequency state. So you can raise above that, you're kind of fucked. And I didn't really want to tell him that directly, but the programming is too strong, man. The programming is strong. And I know that, incorporating animal meat in his diet would have healed him, right? It's tissue. The protein you're getting from eggs and other, non-animal based sources of protein, they're not equivalent to animal protein, right? This whole argument, oh, Ross, meat and the frequency of the animals, Nah, there's more to it. Like I said, it's all about the intentions. I've heard it all. I've heard the animal and the frequency of the animal if they die before they're killed. How they're killed also matters too. That's for a different conversation. But again, when it's time to eat the meal and, showing gratitude and having a personal ritual before every single meal is very important. At least, out of respect for nature and, again, the animal sacrifice, right? And I notice a feminine pattern. People who don't incorporate meat in their diet, oftentimes they're very feminine. You've got some guys who are able to put on muscle, bodybuilders, on non-animal diets, meat-based diet. Even then, I notice a kind of feminine energy with them, so it is what it is. Again, what works for you works for you. But one thing that I really love and appreciate with the guys on my Discord, and I tell them this all the time, and they do this, they question everything. Even me, question everything. Learn to have your own eye, right? Use your own discernment, especially if you're going far on the journey, right? And you've built up that energy. Your intuition and your inner knowing is going to be very, very powerful. You will just instinctually gravitate to good information and instinctually reject, bullshit information. It just won't resonate with you. People ask me, yo, Ross, you read books? I'm not used to, but nowadays, if I do read, it'll be like an autobiography or something, right? Someone who I liked how they think. I'm trying to really understand their thought process a little bit more. I might read, right? It's a means to an end, but reading just to read, to a certain extent, I think it's kind of redundant. We're already in a world full of information overload, and you go long enough on this practice, you start tapping into, Akashic records, and whether you know how to consciously tap into it or not, you're pulling information in real time on this practice, whether you know it or not. That's why before books and handwritten texts, where did wisdom come from, right? How did people pass on wisdom? Well, it was word of mouth, but where did they get the wisdom, right? It's observation, right? Just being in tune with their higher self, right? So information is frequency. Right now, I think, people take reading and just really consuming information nonstop. There's good and bad to it, right? People, I think nowadays overdo it instead of trusting their own intelligence, right? Tapping into something greater, right? And this practice, semen retention, it definitely helps you with that. We can talk about the different clairabilities, right? That inner knowing, you will become very clairvoyant, but this is a little bit deeper. You guys know what I'm talking about. There are times where you just get a light, something happens, you might get a little ear ringing, this and that, and then soon after you just know something that you didn't know, you didn't understand, you all of a sudden understand it. It makes sense. Where did that come from?